Mercedes-Benz has overhauled its medium SUV, the GLC, for 2023, and it's taken a few big risks. The GLC is an important model for the German brand. Since it launched in 2015, it's become Mercedes' top-selling model both globally and in Australia. So, what's changed? Well, conveniently, I've been given a sneak peek at the all-new GLC in Mercedes' digital showroom in Melbourne, and I just so happen to have the old GLC here with me too, so I can talk you through every single difference. If you like this old versus new review format, make sure you let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel. And while I won't be driving the new GLC today, we are going to get a local test drive shortly, so make sure you stay tuned to Drive.com.au for all the updates. Now, I mentioned before that Mercedes was taking a big risk with this car, and here it is. From when it lands in showrooms in June 2023, the new GLC will only be offered in a single specification grade in Australia, the GLC 300. So first and foremost, how much does it cost? Well, given the previous entry-level GLC 200 has disappeared, the price of entry into the GLC range has risen considerably. The new GLC 300 is priced from $103,370 plus on-road costs, which is around $11,000 more than the same grade in the old range. Of course, the price hikes have meant the equipment level has improved, and stuff that used to be an optional extra is now standard. The old GLC I have with me today is the GLC 300, and that grade used to start at $92,300 plus on-road costs. However, with the optional extras fitted to this car, so AMG line exterior styling, metallic paint and air suspension, it actually brings the total cost to around $106,000 plus on-road costs. That means that while this car over here is substantially newer with much more kit, this car is actually more expensive. Now, looking at the two side by side, you could be forgiven for assuming that not much has changed, because really, it hasn't. However, if you look a little bit more closely, the new GLC kind of just looks like the old one as if it had gone on a juice cleanse. So that's courtesy of things like the slimmer LED headlights and taillights, this cool new grille which actually features little mini three-pointed stars, which is really cool, and an overall sleeker profile for improved aerodynamics, which in turn should make this car more efficient. It also gets a lot more kit as standard, so that includes a panoramic glass sunroof, plus these 20-inch multi-spoke AMG line alloy wheels, which on this car have been blacked out. That's an $1,000 extra, but otherwise they still look pretty cool even if you don't black them out. Plus, metallic paint is now available at no extra cost. Now, it's kind of hard to tell in this space, but the new GLC is actually 6 centimeters longer than its predecessor with a longer wheelbase. So that in theory should translate to more interior space. However, if you're worried about fitting it in your garage, this car is still roughly the same width as this car, and it's actually slightly smaller in height. So we'll jump into the cabins of both shortly to see how those changes have translated to the interior. But first, let's check out what's under the bonnet. The new GLC 300's powertrain has benefited from a slight performance boost, courtesy of the addition of a mild hybrid system. There's still a 2-litre, 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine under the bonnet, sending drive to all 4 wheels via a 9-speed automatic transmission, but now it's aided by a 48-volt mild hybrid system that can turn the engine off while cruising or add a power and torque boost under heavy acceleration. The old model's outputs were rated at 190 kilowatts of power and 370 newton meters of torque, while the new model's power output remains unchanged and the torque figure has risen to 400 newton meters. Claimed fuel use is also down to 7.7 litres per 100 kilometres, which is lower than the previous generation's claim of 8.2 litres per 100 kilometres. So I'm in the cabin of the old GLC. I'm just going to keep calling them old and new GLC for the purposes of being straightforward. And I'll be honest, it's not a terrible place to be. This is still a really premium feeling car. It's just that some things are starting to look a little bit dated by new Mercedes standards. So for example, this touchscreen here is 10.25 inches. We always use inches for measuring screens. I don't know why. We should probably use centimeters, but it's not small. And for mass market cars, this is kind of, more or less the standard, although we are seeing bigger screens pop up. But, by Mercedes standards, some of those hyper screens are becoming huge. This is looking a little bit small. On top of that, The digital driver display is really kind of quite a small screen nestled within the instrument cluster. Plus, things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto require a wired connection. However, it's very comfortable, it's very practical as well. The seats are finished as standard in Artico man-made leather, but you did have the option on this car of optioning genuine leather. And this center console is finished in this wood grain here, which is really lovely. And there's some nice kind of Artico finish on the dash as well. You've got electric seats. These are heated. That's an optional extra on the old GLC, as is the panoramic sunroof. So those are things that are not standard on this car, but they are standard on that car, which I'll get to in a second. And look, it's pretty spacious. I will say I'm kind of conscious of the bolstering of the seats, but they are pretty comfortable. And this center console is not too intrusive. It's sort of narrow, and there's a nice butterfly opening lid on the center console storage with a couple of USB-C ports in there. The main difference, I suppose, is obviously this screen, and plus the steering wheel. It's lovely and soft and a lovely leather, and it's got actual physical controls for things like your cruise control and your volume, your audio volume and things like that. And you've also got physical climate controls as well, which is something we'll look at in this car because a few things have changed. I'm in the front seat of the new GLC, in case you couldn't tell, and obviously things are just a bit fresher, more streamlined, more modern. It's interesting because while the car is still the same width as the previous generation, it does feel like I have more room to move. So that could be a product of the longer wheelbase, just allowing for more interior space in general. I will say one thing I noticed just on the spec sheet is that headroom has decreased in the new GLC, purely as a function of the fact that the car is now a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more aerodynamic. I can't really tell because this now standard sunroof is brightening everything up and providing plenty of clearance for me. I'm 178 centimeters, more or less, and this is sort of in my usual driving position, so I do feel like there's plenty of headroom and it's not too much of a worry. Certainly feels nice and wide in here. I will say this center console looks fantastic. It does come up a little bit higher than the one in the old GLC, so I'm more aware of it, but it's kind of like a nice easy armrest. Plus it flows really beautifully into this brand new infotainment screen, which is bigger. I think it's about 11.9 inches, but it's also portrait orientation, which I tend to love. So it's like they've taken the screen from the old one and flipped it and made it a little bit bigger. And functionality is really straightforward. I've had a little bit of a play, kind of is familiar to anyone who has maybe an iPhone or something like that in the setup. The menu options are kind of laid out really cleanly. You've also now got a really nice big digital driver display. It's 12.3 inches, plus a head-up display is now standard on this car, so it projects onto the windscreen in front of you while you're driving. It has things like digital speedo and all your driver assistance info as well. Center console has a wireless phone charger, which is stowed away under here with a couple of cup holders. Wireless CarPlay and Android Auto now standard as well, so that's really handy. These seats are finished in the Artico leather, which was the same situation on the old GLC. The only thing that's changed is that you can't now get genuine leather even as an option, so Artico it is. But I will say, as well as being a bit of a cost-saving measure for Mercedes, it's probably because you can't really tell the difference between this and real leather, at least in my opinion. The steering wheel, however, is finished in real Napa leather. Another big change is that you'll remember that I mentioned that the controls in the old GLC were all physical controls, so buttons and levers on the steering wheel and for the climate controls. They are now touch controls with a bit of haptic feedback. So they do take a bit of getting used to. I personally don't love them. It's really a preference thing. I think if you had this car day in, day out, you'd find it fine, but it's a bit of an adjustment period. So the same thing goes for the climate menu and operational controls, whereas previously they were physical buttons. They're now incorporated into this touch screen. So again, a bit of an adjustment, but it does make everything a little bit cleaner, and it certainly contributes to this beautiful streamlined center console and dash. So that's good to know. One cool party trick this car has is that if you pair your profile with the Mercedes Me app, there's actually a fingerprint scanner just here underneath the screen. And what that basically means is you can save all your settings to your individual driver profile so that when you get in, if you share the car with a partner or someone else, you can hop in, put your finger here, and it will reset all of your settings, your seat positioning, even your ambient lighting, all your displays to your preferences. So that's pretty nifty of a party trick, I think. Additionally, you now get as standard a 360-degree camera on this car plus self-park. And additionally, if you are planning on doing some off-roading, which I have to assume most owners of this car will probably only be braving a dirt road, but you never know. There's now a function that provides a see-through bonnet view, so you can actually see the terrain that's directly below your car. So lots of cool new gizmos, and overall a pretty nifty cabin. And I will say, nice and wide, and a nice kind of comfy armrest here, courtesy of the center console. I'm currently in the back seat of the old GLC, and I will say one thing that the GLC has always done well is legroom and space. It's always been a comfortable car, so this is by no means a significant sort of downgrade on the new car, which I'll speak about shortly. It's still really comfortable, if a little bit maybe basic. So there's just a set of air vents at the back of the center console here, pretty basic. You don't get your own climate controls or anything like that. You've obviously got the lovely sunroof extending into the back, letting plenty of light in. A couple of sort of firm leather map pockets on the back of the seats as well. One thing I've never really noticed in the GLC, but I really appreciate as a mum, is the fact that the ISOFIX tether points have little covers on them. And in a lot of other cars I've driven, they're really hard plastic covers that you kind of have to wedge out, and I've often actually cut myself on them because they're so kind of sharp and uncomfortable to use. But Mercedes, being Mercedes, has made these nice little neat rubber flaps that just sort of stow away and you don't have to even take them off. So I really appreciate that. You've got a fold down armrest here with a couple of cup holders and an opening compartment as well, so that's pretty nifty. This seat folds in a 40-20-40 configuration, so you're able to get access to the boot just through the middle slot here if you need it, so that's really useful too. This car, I think I already mentioned, is fitted with the AMG line exterior and interior styling packs, which were an optional extra on the old model, but are now included standard on the new car. So you get things like these AMG branded floor mats. So we'll see how that treatment compares to the new one. But overall, it is a comfortable place to be. You can see I've got heaps of knee room and leg room. Toe room's great as well. And I feel like headroom is really fantastic too. So comfortable, not particularly exciting, but it's got pretty much everything you could need. Now, before I get into the back seat of the new GLC, there's one thing I wanted to call out, and Mercedes has made countless revisions and tweaks based on consumer feedback to the new GLC. And one of the things that's changed is this side step here. So the new car still has a side step, but you'll notice on the old GLC, it's all the same width pretty much from start to finish. So same width for the front passengers and the rear passengers as well. But I'm going to just take you over to the new GLC and tell you how and why that's changed. Now on the new GLC, the side step's still there, but you'll notice it's a lot narrower at the front of the car than it is at the rear. And that's because Mercedes figured out that the people who are using the side step most frequently are the people in the back seat, aka the kids. Meanwhile, the people in the front seat were finding that in getting in and out of the car, their white pants and nice clothing were getting dirty because it was brushing up against that really wide side step. So basically, it's a best of both worlds situation whereby the kids get the full width of the side step at the back, but you can keep your nice white pants clean and not have them brush up against a massive protrusion at the front. All right, welcome to the back seat of the new GLC. Now, although this car's wheelbase is 15 millimeters longer than the old model, which should theoretically allow for more room, I've got to be honest with you and say I'm not noticing a huge difference. It's still really nice and spacious. If anything, the biggest difference for me is in the width once again. So even though this car is the same width as the old car, it seems they've just made better use of the sort of elbow room and room to move. But all in all, it's pretty much the same kind of vibe back here, just a bit snazzier. So you've got a couple of air vents, they just look cooler. There's the addition of a really small little storage tray on the back of the center console, so that's good for, you know, I suppose an AirPod case maybe at most. Some nice big door bins down here, and obviously this kind of cream Artico leather is making the space feel lots brighter and roomier and nicer in general. One cool change though that I will call out is that you've also got a drop down armrest like in the old model. However, it's got a multi-function little pull-out tray, so if you hit it the first time, something quite narrow pops out, and that's actually a pen holder. So I don't know how useful that will be, but it's kind of a snazzy inclusion, and I suppose it's for the business person on the go. If you push it in another sort of halfway, pops out some really nice cup holders. So you've got that multi-purpose armrest there, but you do lose that storage lift-up tray. So that's maybe a little bit of a sacrifice. This seat also folds 40-20-40, so you have access to the boot if you need it. And I'm going to review the ISOFIX cover points and can confirm they are the same nice, soft, rubbery feel as in the old model. They seem to be even a little bit smaller too, so it's even easier access to those ISOFIX tether points. One last thing we've just noticed by doing a really direct side-by-side comparison is that this panoramic sunroof, whilst also being standard where it was previously an optional extra, is also wider and it goes back further. So on the old model it kind of ended at the door line here, but now it goes all the way back to the rear headrest as well. So yeah, all in all, a lovely back seat. Not huge leaps and bounds forward, it just feels a little bit more classy and elevated back here, which is, I suppose, what you want. The new GLC scored a 5-star safety rating from ANCAP and performed incredibly well in crash testing. The new GLC's adult occupant protection score is the second highest of any mid-size SUV tested against ANCAP's new stricter protocols, second only to the Tesla Model Y. Meanwhile, its child occupant protection rating is the equal highest of any mid-size SUV on sale in Australia, tied with the Mitsubishi Outlander. The airbag count on the new GLC has also been bolstered from 7 to 10. Standard safety equipment now includes adaptive high beams, a 360-degree camera that's more advanced than the old version, tyre pressure warning system, blind spot assist, active lane keeping and distance control, and traffic sign recognition. So this is the boot of the old GLC, and I can tell you it's a really kind of wide accommodating space. It's got a power tailgate as standard, so that's really handy. There's a few useful features back here. The first one is that because this car is fitted with the optional air suspension, you can raise and lower it. So if you are loading in heavy things, you can lower the car down to make it less of a lift height for you, which is handy. It's also got no boot lip, which is good, so it's a nice flat loading floor. Under the floor here, you haven't got a whole heap of stuff. There is a little bit of underfloor storage, but it's kind of, there's a few bits and pieces back here, including a first aid kit, and it's not really usable underfloor storage. It's sort of small little compartments here and there, but not a really big spot for something like a suitcase or a bag. However, you've got a useful storage net on the side here. You've also got a lever here that can remotely lower the second row, so that's useful if you're loading things in from the back. I've got a retractable sort of soft leather cargo cover here, which I can pop into place like that. And I think this boot is around 550 litres, which is sort of the gold standard for a medium SUV. Not particularly huge, but certainly not small by anyone's standards. And I think it's a very usable space. There's no sort of little impediments on the area. It's nice and wide and open and just great for loading items in and out. One last thing is that the old GLC didn't have a spare wheel. These are run flat tyres and they can be a good or bad thing depending on your needs. If you get a flat around town, it's enough to get you to your nearest service centre safely. However, if you are regularly journeying further out of town, the lack of a spare wheel could prove a little bit of a challenge. So that brings me to the new GLC. Let's go check it out. So the new GLC also has a power tailgate as standard. You'll also notice as well on this car that privacy glass is also standard, worth a call out in case that's your kind of vibe. Back here, apparently, it's grown by 50 litres. Look, to me, I wouldn't be able to tell, but I'm going to trust Mercedes on this one. It's still a really nice, big, usable boot. I think the real strength here is not so much the height, but the sheer width of it. The unencumbered kind of load space is really handy. Again, you don't have any annoying boot lip when loading and unloading things, and the overall design is pretty similar to the old model. One big change here, though, is that you do sacrifice some of that underfloor storage available on the old model because there is a temporary use spare included now. So that will be really great news for anyone who actually does want to treat this car as a road tripper and take it out of town a little bit further. Just that added peace of mind factor I think is really handy. Otherwise, they got rid of the air suspension option on this new model because I think basically people weren't really buying it. So no option to raise or lower your car, sadly, but it's a pretty easy accessible space, and you do still have these levers to remotely lower the second row there. I've also got the pretty much exact same cargo cover. It's like a soft leather retractable cargo cover that works really nicely and can be removed should you need it. But all in all, not a huge change to boot space. The big call out, temporary use spare wheel and 50 litres of extra storage room. If you're wondering about the plug-in hybrid variants of the new GLC, those won't be coming to Australia because the brand is instead choosing to focus on its all-electric offerings in Australia. Same goes for any more affordable GLC 200 variants too, unfortunately. However, we are going to be getting a coupe-styled version of the new GLC in December 2023, with some performance-enhanced AMG variants likely to follow soon thereafter. Now, in summary, it seems like the new GLC is a little bit more expensive, a little bit bigger, a little bit more powerful and a little bit more efficient, but a lot more fancy with a lot more standard kit and some seriously impressive safety credentials. In streamlining the GLC range, it feels like Mercedes is just zeroing in on what it knows will work and what it knows will sell. Thanks for watching my comparison of the new and old GLC. If you liked it, let me know in the comments, good things only, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and head to Drive.com.au so you can read the full written article. But for now, I'll GLC you later.